Hello everyone, this is FIDE Master Arne Jochens from chessuniversity.com, and this is the first video in our free video series on Endgame Art. This series is aimed primarily at the 1400 to 1800 rating level, but I hope that it will be enjoyable and contain something useful for players below or above that level as well. And the format of this series is such that in each short video I will present one carefully selected endgame study. An endgame study is a position that was composed as a puzzle, so this means you have to find a way for white to either win or draw against best play by black. And at that point, when I have introduced the study, I would always recommend you pause the video so that you can see if you can solve the study on your own. For that you may take as much time as you want. Maybe you will even want to get a chess set out and set up the position. In this series the emphasis is not on calculation training, so you can feel free to move the pieces if necessary. And then in the video I will discuss the solution by talking you through the process of how I would have gone about solving it. And in doing so we will work out the general ideas that are contained in the study. And I will have selected the study with this goal in mind, so that in each video we are going not only to enjoy a work of art, but also we are going to learn something relevant for practical play in the process. So for this first video I have selected a study and the position is already set up here. The stipulation is white to play and win, and this is a study by Richard Reti. He was born in 1889 and he was a world-class player, although never a serious world championship contender. And today we can say that his lasting contribution to the game lies in his writing mainly. He spread many new ideas, as was the title of one of his books, and today he is recognized as one of the forces behind what is known as the hyper-modern revolution in chess. But he was also a very fine study composer, as this example is going to show. This is one of his most famous studies, and this version was published in the German newspaper Münchner Neueste Nachrichten in 1928. So it's white to play and win against best play by black. If you want to, you can pause the video at this point so that you have time to think about this. Okay. So if I were to see this position for the first time, I would think along these lines. First of all, it's clear we have to move the rook because the rook is attacked. So in principle we can do this in two ways. We can either move along the fourth rank or along the d file. So let's look at both. If we move the rook along the fourth rank, there are of course several possibilities. Maybe rook h4 is the most natural one, so that the rook is far away from black's king. This is often a good idea. If you have a choice where to put your rook, it's often a good idea to put it as far away from your opponent's king as possible, so that your rook may not be attacked so easily. And also putting it to the right side of the pawn is logical here, because black's king is on the same side of the pawn, so maybe it could be useful for white to have this option to check the black king if necessary. So rook h4 is certainly logical. But now we have to calculate what would black do. He doesn't have a useful king move, so he would certainly play d4 in this position. And now you can already see that white has a slight problem here. The rook alone cannot win against the pawn as long as the pawn is supported by the king. So to win, white has to win this pawn, and to do this he has to coordinate his king with the rook. So basically to win, white has to attack this pawn with both king and rook. But now at the moment the king cannot come any closer, as you can see. We call this situation where the kings are as close as possible to each other the opposition. And here we say black has the opposition because it's white to move and he would like to come closer but can't. So what can white do to bring his king closer to the pawn? Well, he could try to walk around the black king, But here, as you can verify for yourselves, this would take too much time. And the other possibility is to check the black king, rook h5 check, so that he has to give way king e4, and now the white king can come closer, king d6, black will advance the pawn, d3, king c5, d2, but now you can see that the pawn is already threatening to promote. So white has to lose time by stopping this with his rook, say rook to d5, and then black can play king e3, defending the pawn. White will try king c4, but now black already plays king e2, threatening to promote and making a draw. And the white king is just not in time in this line. White can play king c3, but then black can promote. White will have to take, and it is a draw. So note that the white king was just one tempo short here. If the white king had already been on c3 in this position, then white could have captured the pawn. But as it was, white was too slow. So rook h4 does not win. And similarly, any move by the rook on the 4th rank does not win, for very similar reasons. Black will advance the pawn, the white king cannot approach the pawn directly, and so white will not be in time. So what else can white try? Well, he can move the rook along the d file then. And certainly the most natural move there is rook to d1, for the same reason as before. Normally it's good, if you have a choice, to put your rook as far away from your opponent's king as possible. But again, we have to calculate. So black will play d4, and now white has a similar problem as in the other line. He would like to bring his king closer, but he can't do this directly. And this time he also has no useful check, because if you check the black king here, he will only come closer to the promotion square of his pawn, and this would actually help black. So the only try is king to d7, to bring the king around in this way to try to stop the pawn. And this could be successful if black is not careful. For example, if black plays king e4, then white is in time. Then he can play king d6 or king c6, d3, king c5, king e3, king c4, the pawn is attacked, and after d2, king c3, the pawn is attacked again, and the pawn will be lost. So here white is in time, white is winning. But black can be more clever than that. In this position, he can prevent white's idea by playing king to d5. And now white has the same problem as before. He would like to bring his king closer to the pawn, but he can't, because black has the opposition. And if you think about this, you will realize that white has no useful move at all in this position. What's more, he even has no neutral move. This is a position where white would like to make no move at all, to pass. But as this is not allowed in chess, this is actually what we call a Zugzwang position. Zugzwang is a German term meaning compulsion to move, and it refers to a situation where the side that has the move would rather not move at all, where any move that you can make actually worsens your position, or at least you do not make progress. So here white is not losing, certainly he can always make a draw by taking the pawn, but also he has no useful move to make progress. For example, if he plays the king to c7, then black will just do the same, play king c5, keeping the status quo. White can make no progress. And similarly, if the king goes to e7 instead, black will play king e5, repeating the position. But white also has no useful move with the rook. The rook wants to stay on the d file to prevent black's pawn from advancing. So if you have to move the rook, you would have to play rook d2 or rook d3. But this worsens the position of the rook, because now black can play king e4 or king c4, does not matter. And although this time white can bring his king closer again, after king e3, you can see that the rook is worse on d2 than it was on d1, because here it is already attacked now. And this wins a crucial tempo for black, a crucial move. White will have to move the rook, say rook d1, and now after d3, king d5, d2, king c4, king e2, you can see that black is in time to force the white rook to sacrifice itself for the pawn and make a draw. So this is the key position. In our analysis we have reached this position with white to move, and we have seen that this is actually a Zugzwang position. And once you have realized this, you should look for a way to bring about the same position but with the other side to move. So the question for white is, how can we reach this position with black to move? Going back to the original position where it was white to move, this means we have to lose one move. We have to lose a tempo, as we say. And this can be done by moving the rook to d1, not in one but in two moves. So the solution is white plays rook to d2 first, or rook to d3, this does not matter. The point is that after black moves, say black moves d4, which is the best try to still keep the white king from approaching the pawn, but only now does white play rook to d1, losing the tempo. So that now if black plays king d5, white can play king d7, and here you can see we have reached the same Zugzwang position as before, but this time with the decisive difference that now it is black to move. And if black is to move, and this really is a Zugzwang position, this means that black does not have any move that does not worsen his position. And this is true because he cannot move the pawn. If the pawn moves, it is just lost immediately. So black has to move the king. But wherever he moves the king, he will make room for the white king to approach the pawn in some way. For example, if the king moves to c4, white can play king to d6. And this is decisive. Let's check. If black plays d3, king e5, king c3, king e4, d2, king e3, white is in time to catch the pawn. So white is winning. And this is true whatever black does in this position. If he plays, say, king e5 instead, white can also approach the pawn, this time via c6. So white will be in time again to stop the pawn. So that was the solution. Bring the rook to d1, but not in one, but in two moves. Either rook d3 or rook to d2 on the first move, and only then rook d1, so that we reach this position with black to move. So this was a classic example of an endgame that can only be understood by thinking in terms of this Zugzwang idea. The key was to identify this position as a Zugzwang position and then look for a way to reach it with your opponent to move. And this is a general idea that is relevant to many practical endgames. So if you master this skill to recognize potential Zugzwang positions and then look for ways to bring them about with the right side to move from your point of view, then you can significantly improve your endgame skills. Okay, so that's all for this first example. If you found this video useful, then please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. And of course, if you want to, you can check out our other content and our programs on chessuniversity.com. For example, you can take a free quiz there. And also, if you have any feedback or suggestions for us, in particular with regard to future videos in this series, just write a comment below this video. Thank you for watching, and goodbye everyone.